Nexus PMG welcomes you to the Bigger Than Us podcast, which we as energy geeks lovingly refer to as the BTU. Bigger Than Us is a podcast that focuses on ideas that will shape the future of our planet and ultimately our existence. We will occasionally lean into energy topics because, after all, it's the key to our collective survival. But we'll also explore other ideas and topics that we believe will have an impact that is bigger than us. And now, on to today's show. Hello, and welcome to the Bigger Than Us podcast. I'm your host, Raj Daniels, and today I'd like to welcome Stacy Savage to the show. Stacy Savage is the founder and president of ZWS, an environmental consultancy specializing in zero waste and circular economy concepts. ZWS works with leaders in the business, government, and nonprofit sectors who are serious about reducing waste to drive increased profits, deeper customer loyalty, employee empowerment, and a green marketing edge. With 17 years of experience in zero waste policy development, business implementation, and education training, ZWS has adjusted entire corporate and municipal waste protocols for optimization and has empowered thousands of employees through engaging training sessions, ensuring program success. Stacy, how are you doing today?
Hi, Raj. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Likewise, Stacy. Stacy, where are you currently located?
I am just 30 miles east of Austin, Texas. It's a smaller rural town called Bastrop.
And I'm guessing, is it as hot as Dallas? We're pretty much at 100 degrees today, I think.
Yeah, I think we're probably a little hotter, and my area is famous for the pine forests. There's a pine forest out here, and so I think it may even be a little bit more humid than several regions in the area out in Austin. So it definitely traps in the heat with all those trees out here.
You know, we had that effect here recently. My wife and I were out walking earlier this week in the evening, about 9 o'clock, and I was explaining to her the heat island effect because she was saying it's still so hot. And I said, the concrete absorbs all the heat in the daytime, and at nighttime the heat emanates from the concrete going upwards. And so I don't think we're getting below 85 at nighttime now.
Yeah, it's getting pretty brutal.
It is. Fortunately, we're indoors, so that helps. So, Stacy, I like to open my show by asking my guests the following question. If you were asked to share something interesting about yourself, what would it be?
Well, one thing that most people don't know about me is that I was a professional dancer and choreographer for about 20 years, and performed in LA and went to national and international competitions with my dance troupe, and was a choreographer for Texas high school drill teams that do the halftime routines at football games, and teaching them their competition routines as well. And so that was a lot of fun. Got to travel the state and meet all these wonderful young women who were really exploring their passion for dance, tap, ballet, jazz, hip hop, gymnastics, you name it. It was part of my repertoire. So that is something that most folks would not know, just looking at me.
So, what was your dance of choice?
I was more in the lyrical jazz style, and then I'd like to change it up a little bit with some hip hop. I got some
Very nice.
Some funky grooves.
Now, before we move on, I have to ask you also about the Texas trash talker.
That moniker I just kind of gave to myself because I am working on building a brand and a personality around talking about waste issues, and trash is not sexy. It's not something that people want to talk about. It's not something that people even want to look at. But it is a key driver for optimization within a business or even in the home. where we recreate as well. So we are at a point where we absolutely must look at our waste materials and our everyday actions and our just cultural habits as well. So the Texas Trash Talker personalities, whenever I do videos on TikTok or whenever I take photos, I've always got my Texas cowgirl hat on. And let's talk trash is basically what the platform is, and helping people understand the waste that they produce drives a direct effect to landfills filling up, and how we're just kind of burning and burying jobs whenever it comes to improper handling of material discards. So, if you're throwing your soda bottle away or you're throwing your beer can away, we can't get that back, really, unless there's some intensive processes there to go back and dig through a landfill to pull out all the recoverable materials that should have never ended up there in the first place. So how can we help people develop their habits around waste diversion instead of everything going into a hole in the ground, regarding landfills. So that's just part of the platform is let's talk trash, let's make it fun, and let's get people energized about switching over their thinking habits about the value of material discards. I think people think of things as waste because they don't see the inherent value of that particular item as a commodity. They don't understand the tie-in to the economic aspect, the job creation aspect, the aspect where we can stabilize local tax bases, right? We can make our local tax bases more robust and stable. So, helping people understand that there's the environmental concern, but on the flip side of the coin, the economics of just throwing everything away just doesn't make sense. So how do we get folks to view their material discards differently than what they are viewed right now? Because right now they're ending up in landfills and in our oceans, right?
So since you mentioned waste, can you give an overview of zero waste strategies?
Sure. Zero Waste Strategies is an environmental consulting firm based here in the Austin, Texas region. We consult businesses and local governments to use waste reduction to drive increased revenue, deeper customer loyalty, employee empowerment, and to drive a green marketing edge. And so our client list includes companies like Dell, AT&T, Nestle, Purina, Pet Care, and City of Austin, Kohler, which is the bathroom fixture brand, Unico Properties. We're able to really help these companies understand, where their waste materials are being generated within their structure, within their business operational structure. See where we can reduce waste, and then adjust their back end contracts with their trash and recycling haulers, maybe even their compost haulers if they have a compost program implemented. If not, obviously we would help them implement a compost program if they do have food waste on site. So it's a consultancy that works with these businesses and local governments, but we really specialize in zero waste protocols and best practices to drive the circular economy, to really get away from the linear economy of, extract raw virgin materials, process them, transport them, and then the consumer buys what's on the shelf and presented in front of them. That's very linear because whenever that product is old or obsolete, it typically would go to landfill. So how do we take both ends of that linear design economy and connect them into a loop and, have some, materials be feedstock for other types of industries so that they're not going to waste because you put all all of this time and effort and energy and money into the extraction process. Let's give those materials third, fourth, fifth rounds of life. Let's repurpose them, repair them, remanufacture them into other usable products. Keep it back flowing into the circular economy instead of extraction, transport, consumer purchase, and then landfill.
So I love the idea of repurpose, and you mentioned some pretty well-known names there. Without mentioning any particular client, can you share some interesting experiences or conversations you've had with some of your clients?
Yes, the one of the biggest problems that through my market research and being able to work directly hand in hand with the key leadership of some of these companies is that a lot of times they're some of the main issues or headaches that they face are being presented with a CEO mandate. It comes from the top down, right? And that worker has to figure out how to implement. But a lot of times there's really not any funding or enforcement mechanisms in place to make the program work. And so, there's a lot of time and effort being put into getting these new zero waste systems into place. But if there's no support or minimal support from leadership, your top executives, then a lot of times, workers just don't take it seriously. So I've had, at least two of the companies that I did mention came to me out of a panic. Just, we have to get this program into place by this certain date. It's a corporate mandate from the CEO. I don't know where to start. So it's either they don't know where to start, or they've got great intentions, right? But they're just so overwhelmed with the day to day that who has time to put a new program into place? And then the third thing that I find is that they are afraid of messing up this CEO mandate, and it's all on their shoulders, but they don't have any funding or enforcement. And so when you roll out these types of programs and you don't have the employee buy-in, you're really just not going to see much success. And so really getting, the employee buy-in through making it fun. Again, nobody likes to talk about or think about or look at their waste. And it also requires habit change. It requires individual habit change, and it requires corporate culture change. And so you think about this huge ship that you have to turn around whenever you're implementing these waste diversion programs. You have to start immediately with training staff, and also making it a policy or a personnel policy agreement. So when you bring a new person on to staff, they usually have to sign agreements for working for your company. If you're not putting into the personnel policy agreement that I will follow the recycling and compost standards, and that I will do my best to align with these policies, and then you're really not going to have that agreement from the get-go. And I think that's really key piece that a lot of companies are missing, is that they're not adjusting their personnel policy agreements, because that gives management leverage to say, hey, you agreed to this policy, but I did, over the course of the last 3 weeks, I've seen you put your reuse or your recyclables into the landfill trash system. So, let's go back and revisit this. Let's retrain you on this. Maybe it needs to be part of the training program up front, because this is going to help reduce contamination and your bins as well. If there's a certain level of contamination, then your recycling hauler is just, it's going to be deemed too contaminated. And all the effort that you put into not only having the bin accessible, having your signs up, training, it's all going to go to literally to waste, because if it's too contaminated, because people aren't sorting properly at the source, at the point of separation there on site, then it's going to be landfilled. And that is an unfortunate scenario, but recyclers just cannot deal with a certain amount or beyond of contamination in their bins. So, I would say that those are the kind of the top headaches that we like to address for our clients, is giving them that launch pad of where to start. What are the easiest, most accessible, kind of bang for buck steps in order to launch that program, and really hold their hand and walk them through it. Unfortunately, during COVID, we're having to shift from an on-site approach to more of an online training approach for executives and key decision makers within a corporate structure.
So I really like the idea of the launchpad. That personnel policy agreement is an excellent example. Can you share one or two more examples of perhaps tactical steps that you help your clients to lead them to success with their zero waste strategies?
Yeah, actually, we had a client who has booked us for the last 4 years in the brutal Texas heat, which I'm not complaining at all. Very grateful to have their business, but providing these on-site waste audits where we're up to our elbows in their trash bags that have been collected overnight by the janitorial crew and put aside for us so that we can go through and pick through every single trash bag and recycling bag, and really try to audit that waste, because they need that information in order to get LEED certification. And for folks who don't know, I think back in 2016, LEED standards were built out in a more robust way by including zero waste protocols. So in order to get your strongest LEED certification, there needs to be a zero waste aspect to your approach in order to get that certification now. And so for businesses that employ maybe a sustainability director or a sustainability engineer who maybe they graduated 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, and they understand the key decision-making around energy and water conservation and those protocols, they were not really taught about waste management or how to divert waste or how to even do waste reduction measures. So now they have to implement that, but they, again, may not know where to start. So that's where we would come in to bring our expertise to the table. So this client in downtown Austin needed waste audits. And so for the past 4 years, we've shown them our waste audit measurements, and we've shown them year-on-year improvement. And what that points back to is that they're doing better at training. They're doing better at having more accessible bins for people, so that, sometimes we get a little lazy. And if the recycling bin is 10 feet away and I've got a soda can and the landfill trash is right next to my desk, well, which one am I going to use, especially if I've got a full plate and I've got deadlines and, wherever I can save time. Sometimes we do tend to get a little lazy if the bins are not as readily accessible as we need them to be to make the proper decision with handling the materials that are in our hands at that point in time. And so we, did these waste audits 4 years in a row. We've been able to show them year-on-year improvement. We've been able to show how their recycling rate has increased. We've been able to give them additional suggestions in our reporting. We drafted I think last time was like a 17-page report just on this, one facility, and showing them that historical data as well really helps them with, the charts and the graphs, and being able to relay the information to their office space renters, because the office space renters are the ones who are making the waste, really. And so really being able to relay the information, showing where they've improved and where improvement can happen, more, is a big piece to what we do as well. Showing those, if you're not going to measure it, you can't really calculate it. You can't really tell the story of what's happening on site at your building. And you can't really relay the importance of the program and how it is how it empowers the workers on site, not only the building management, but the the clientele, the clients that rent office space there, really showing them, hey, we're all in this together. This is how we're going to drive these numbers higher for recycling rates. We need your buy-in. Let's do more training. That kind of thing that really shows them the aspects of improvement in their program and where we need to focus next time, or the following budget year. So that reporting was really, really important for them, and it also allowed them to continue their lead certification as well.
Thank you for that example. Now, earlier in the conversation, you briefly touched on an online training program.
Yes.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, like I said, we have traditionally over the last 7 years since our business was founded in 2013, we've relied on being on site and really, talking to the key stakeholders, the key employees that help run kind of the green programs, talking to the procurement department, the legal department, the finance department, the waste and facilities maintenance department. Being able to interview these folks face to face has really been, to get their key insights, right, has really been part of our strategy in order to detail what is really happening on site for the upper management, who is really asking for these programs to be implemented. And so now that we're in a COVID world, we're having to shift everything to more of an online training platform. And through my market research, I've identified 6 key headaches, major headaches for all industries across the board. I've interviewed my target market, my target kind of clientele avatar, which is kind of a key decision maker, also someone who deals with waste contracts for a specific corporation, or within a local government, and really interviewing them with a very, very detailed, forward-thinking questions, and really getting down and psychological about how they view their waste and where they can really cut back on their waste issues, or reducing their waste. And so I've been able to build out 6 training modules that have this content in them that come from these key insights that most facilities are having to deal with and may not know where the remedies lie. And so this training program, would be like a 12-week training program. We can, obviously speed that up a little bit if that's too long, but we can take your hand, walk you through, and going online at your own pace. You can review it, and then, the following week after you've watched the training module, the training video, you map out your questions, you map out things that are specific for your site. And then the week afterwards, after you've done your homework that I give you, then we go into a kind of a support call. And the support call is, can last up to 2 hours if we needed it to really address all of your issues regarding what you learned in that training module and how it directly applies to your facility. And, go over things that we may not have covered in the training module that you still have questions about. And so really helping you feel very supported in putting together these programs, and, really come out the hero once you're done with the training program, coming out the hero for your facility, where you can help drive increased revenue. You can get your employees engaged and empowered around these issues to make individual habit change once they come back to the office. Once COVID is, at that place where it's kind of dying down, and we're feeling a lot more safe, and we're getting back to office routines. People need to go back into the office feeling confident that they're implementing the proper programs for their specific site, and that they understand the strategies and how to get their employees involved, and how to help their employees take ownership of those programs so that they are successful. That's just a kind of a key, higher level overview of what this training program would look like. It helps these folks who are responsible for putting these programs into place walk back into the office with confidence to make sure that they are doing it correctly and doing it correctly for their specific site. Again, every business is different. Every business waste stream is different. Every business hauler contract looks different. So there's a lot of specifics that need to be addressed in the support calls that happen after you review the training module and do your homework. So we'll be launching that very soon. And I'm working with a marketing team so that we can tie it up into a nice little package, put a big red bow on it and say, here, come and get it. We've got the information here for you, so that you're marching into your office with assured confidence that you're going to do it right, and that you're going to be the hero of the waste the waste portion of your business. Maybe a little bit down the road you're able to save a couple $1,000s for the bottom line. Great. So that's every business likes to hear that. Where can we find that cash in your trash?
So I like the idea of cash and trash.
Mm-hmm.
Without going into too much detail, can you list the 6 key headaches just in case there's someone listening and has an aha moment that, you know what, those are one of my headaches, and how can I, perhaps engage in your program?
Sure. So the 6 key headache areas that I have found through my market research is one is the lack of employee training and employee engagement, getting their buy-in. 2 is really solidifying your business integrity. People want to buy from companies that have integrity, and we want to make sure that your sustainability is an integral part of your operations. Another one would be community involvement regarding, local job creation. How do we, take what is coming out the back end of our own facility and selling on the commodities market what is sellable, like your compressed cardboard and metals and that type of thing, but also, getting that back into the system and to create jobs in the local area. Another would be reduction versus recycling. A lot of companies go straight for recycling, and that is a cost, and they don't focus on reduction or reuse first. And there's also a lot of other Re's in there, REs, the 3 R's. There's a lot more in that, like remanufacturing, repurpose, resoiling, which comes from composting. There's a lot of more Re's that we don't talk about that are more cost saving and free. But whenever we get down to the recycling part of it, that's where you have to start spending money. And so what can we do further upstream to implement all the Re's in order to reduce the waste before it heads to even the recycling bin? And then there's a lot of headaches around, is recycling versus landfilling? Is it cheaper to landfill than to recycle? That may be, and it's a business decision. But I know in Texas, it's cheaper to recycle than it is to landfill. So why are we not really pushing that? And then businesses have an issue with how to tell their story. Green storytelling is really the key for the millennial and Zoomer generation, Gen Z. They don't like to be called Gen Z anymore because Z is the last letter in the alphabet, and they don't want to be the last generation. But if we're not changing our corporate culture, if we're not changing our structure, if we're not changing and optimizing for the next generation, then they're not going to give you their business. So how do we do our green storytelling to those generations that are going to be your next boom in consumers? How are you going to keep your business relevant for them to purchase your products? It has to have a green storyline. And then, just mainly just perceptions around waste, just how people view the materials that are in their hands and not understanding the economic impacts whenever they mishandle them improperly, right? So really just bringing about the perception of waste, personal habit change, and corporate culture change. How do we implement that to really drive that green marketing edge, that green storytelling?
I appreciate you going through that list. Staying on the topic of storytelling, the crux of our conversation is the why behind what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me your story. What's your why? Why are you so engaged in zero waste? How did you start, and what keeps you going every day?
Well, I grew up in the southeast Texas region called the Golden Triangle, Beaumont, Port Arthur, um, Orange, and it's right, maybe 45 minutes away from the Louisiana border. It's on the Gulf Coast, and Port Arthur is also considered the oil and gas mecca of the country. And Port Arthur is my birthplace. I lived there until I was 2, and my family moved to a neighboring town. But my parents both still worked at the refineries for a collective 75 years minimum. My dad still works at Chevron. My mother worked at Texaco. So these are major plants. And, unfortunately, by working there, and, not just my parents, my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and, it's honestly one of the best paying gigs in town. But also they were complicit in polluting our own community. And I don't blame them because of that. It was a more lucrative position to have out of the plant. It was more stable. Everybody had families to raise and put through college. So I definitely don't blame them, but it was, economics over environment. It was always why does it have to be a trade-off? And it's not just my own parents complicit. It was my government, local governments giving these huge tax subsidies to corporations that came in to pollute historically Black and Brown communities. So there's an environmental justice around these issues as well. And I we were kind of an apolitical family, didn't really talk much about politics or human rights or any, none of the really like current issues of the day. And so I just grew up kind of oblivious. I thought brown, hazy skies and rotten egg smells wafting through the air was normal. Everybody grew up like that, right? But I had no idea growing up that it was the actual chemical plants and gas or oil refineries down the road that was really making our air quality so poor. And I just graduated high school, went to college, UT Arlington up in the Dallas area, and moved to Austin after that in like '99, and really just got a job waiting tables. That's where I got my gift of gab, I think, is waiting tables and bartending and customer service, and just really helped me with communication and expressing, myself, as well as being very personable with people from all walks of life. And so I finally one day found a job ad in the back of the Austin Chronicle, which is kind of like the free, cool hippie paper around here that, talks a lot about arts and music and film and current events and social justice and that type of thing. And so I looked at one of the ads, and there was a job placement, and it said, "Get paid to fight the man." And I was like, yes. Wait, who's the man? Right? I was so oblivious, and I was 28 years old at the time where I took this job, and I went in for an interview. They took me out into the field. We went door to door, and I fell in love with it. I got to talk to people at their homes, educate them about the environment, some of the local issues that were happening right in their own backyard, getting them activated and really collecting, pulling together the voice of the collective community in order to put pressure on public officials or corporate polluters. So I was really trained to address the issues, and we did a lot of protesting. We did a lot of street theater demonstrations. I organized flash mobs within several Walmarts throughout the country regarding electronic waste take back. We organized so thoroughly across Texas, especially in Central Texas, that we got Dell on board with supporting legislation that would require electronics manufacturers of computers to take back and responsibly recycle their own equipment for free for consumers statewide. And so that bill passed in 2007 unanimously through the Texas House and Senate. And it was because we had Dell on board. I went door to door and I spoke directly to Dell's CFO, not knowing who he was. After I gave my rap at the door, he was like, I'm the CFO for Dell, right? And I was like, nope, didn't know that. But here's the letter. Here's a letter writing opportunity that we're giving to all your neighbors to write a letter to Dell. They received over 10,000 letters from our campaign saying, why aren't you taking this stuff back? It's toxic. It doesn't belong in landfills. And that means the citizen is footing the bill financially, right? And so we passed that legislation unanimously. Governor Perry signed it into law. And then 2 years later, we did it again. We got Thompson on board and I believe Panasonic to pass TV recycling legislation in Texas as well. We only got 6 no votes in the Senate, and we got 12 no votes in the House. And you got to remember, we have 181 legislative districts in Texas. And so, only 10% of the lawmakers said no. So it was a really big victory. It's administered through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which is our state-run, our EPA, kind of EPA. And to date, over 300 million pounds of electronics have been diverted from landfills in Texas. And this stuff has lead, mercury, arsenic. It's really bad for the environment, and it just doesn't belong there. So this is really what kind of partially in Texas spurred the cradle to cradle movement, because this is extended producer responsibility. It is a key component of zero waste, getting the producers of these products to be responsible for the end of the life of their own products, rather than putting the onus on the resident or county landfills or whatnot. And so that was a key victory for us. And after that, I was the program director, statewide program director, legislative director, and I really wanted to advance my career, but I just didn't have anywhere to go because the executive director had been there for 20 something years and she wasn't going anywhere, and that was the next level up. So I really kind of hit a ceiling there, and I said, what else can I do? And so I ran a couple of political campaigns, one for Austin City Council, and I ran a Texas House District race just north of Austin. And needless to say, we lost both because it was so completely divisive. And I was used to, I was with the environmental campaign nonprofit for 9 years. We worked with everybody who had buy-in. So we were a nonpartisan group. I was used to working with conservatives and ultra liberals and businesses and local governments. I was used to pulling people together. The political campaigns were so divisive and, based on opposition research and mudslinging. And it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. I didn't have a passion for it. Unfortunately, we lost both races because I honestly I couldn't do it. So I was just sitting at a stoplight, ready to turn into my neighborhood. And I was just, daydreaming off into the void. And it just kind of hit me, all of a sudden I got smacked with reality. I'm like, well, Stacy, all the haulers, the city council, all the council members, all their aides. You've worked with them for years. All the environmental heavy hitters across the state. All the community groups. Why aren't you the main hub or resource for kind of zero waste expansion across the city? And that's exactly what I did. I went the next day and I purchased my DBA at the county, and we were off to the races. So it was just that kind of smack in the face, if you will, when I was sitting at a stoplight. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I always saw myself as working for somebody else. I didn't really have anything passionate about that I could lead on until I founded Zero Waste Strategies, and I could start working with companies individually. And I started to see them as, Joanne in the accounting department, right? It was Becky in the legal department. It was John in the janitorial department. It wasn't just this huge corporate monster that was pumping out all these pollutants into our community that, I had experienced earlier on in life, and that I had been trained to, really attack the polluters during my nonprofit role. But what I started to see as a business owner on the other side of the coin is that these companies are run by people who care, people who live in their own cherished communities, are part of their involvement in the schools and whatnot. That they've got friends and family in the area. It's not just this nebulous, corporate monster. It's people run these corporations. And I know it's a novel idea, but it was really a big revelation for me as a businesswoman, as a business owner who had to address the person in order to address the pollution, right? And so that was the big aha moment for me.
So that's a pretty amazing story. What are some of the valuable lessons that you've learned on your journey?
Oh, valuable lessons. Wow, there are a lot. I had to, as a business owner, I had to completely switch my thinking. For 15 years, I had been in the nonprofit sector or the political sector. And let me tell you, nonprofit folks just do not get paid. It's not a lucrative position. You're really there because your passion is driving you, and you make sacrifices within your own budget, within your own life, in order to maintain a livable existence on not very much money. And so it was really difficult for me as a business owner to switch my thinking from having that scarcity um, view of life, living in scarcity of, am I going to, it's paycheck to paycheck kind of thing, in order to switch my thinking over to the thinking of an established businesswoman and getting paid what I am worth, because it took me 17 years to build up my expertise. And the vast majority of that expertise was hands-on and, providing leadership within our local Austin community, helping pass local ordinances for business recycling, curbside composting, construction and demolition, waste debris recycling. These were serving on the local zero waste advisory board that vets zero waste policy before it gets to the desk of city council. Really, really having my hands deep into the policy aspect of it as well. So, like I said, hands-on experience. It took me 17 years to develop this expertise. And so getting paid what I was worth without feeling guilty was a major, major breakthrough for me, because, being that activist mindset, I felt guilty even getting a paycheck because I was so passionate about what I was doing. And so really getting a paycheck based on my consulting business and helping these companies alleviate their headaches around where they're getting stuck, and is they really are so appreciative, that I really had to change my mindset around money. That was the biggest thing for me, and really charging what I was worth.
So I think that leads really nicely into my last question, which is if you could share some advice or words of wisdom with the audience, what would it be?
Well, for younger folks who may be listening, um, don't wait until you were 28 years old like me to get involved. Things are happening right now, and because of the internet, because of our access to information at our fingertips that we didn't have back in the 80s and early 90s, growing up, it was just a different time. Just don't wait. Don't You can be involved even if you're not of voting age. You can get involved on campaigns, local campaigns, political campaigns. You can get involved with social media campaigns where you want to, maybe maybe you can write a letter to the editor, or and to provide your own story and why you support sustainability, or why you support children's rights, or why you support worker rights, or whatever issue is most passionate for you. Still just start taking avenues or to address those issues really drive you in different ways. Maybe it's a podcast like this, but maybe it's a TikTok video. Maybe you start a series or something along those lines. Maybe you get involved with a local Facebook group and you start to register voters. Whatever you can do in order to get involved. Maybe you go down to City Hall or the County Commissioner's Court and you put in your 2 cents during the citizens communication portion of those meetings. The youth are really the ones who are driving this conversation, and they are making us as Gen X, Gen Y, boomers, they're making us better. But the main issue is that they're going to have to deal with it when we're gone. And they're going to have to be the ones that unfortunately clean up our mess because we didn't take the time to really be thoughtful about all the waste that we are creating. And so they have every right to be involved as early as possible because we're running out of time. We're down to that decade of catastrophic climate change issues. And so what really helping my call to action is youth involvement. Maybe there's a local Sunrise chapter in your area. Look for Sunrise. This is part of the look to your leaders with the indigenous communities. Maybe there's some indigenous rights issues that you're really wanting to get involved in supporting those communities. Maybe it's water rights. Maybe it's solar energy. I'm not sure. Whatever floats your boat, but people need to try different tactics that mesh well with their capacity, right? And also their age of involvement. So, finding things that are age appropriate to get involved in different tactics is going to be key, but getting involved as early as possible. Don't wait like I did. So that's one key thing that I could put out, that kind of call to action to the youth. But also, we we need to be as older citizens, as older residents, we need to be leading the way as well. We should never rely on the youth to push us to be better. We should be better for them just because they're the next generation inheriting our problems. And so what are we doing in order to address those problems before they have to inherit them? And so that comes again with personal accountability. It comes with corporate culture change. And, it really stems from what we're leaving behind. What's your legacy? So I really want people to think about what is the legacy? What am I leaving behind for the next generation?
So I appreciate both of those. Get involved and think about your legacy. Stacy, I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And I look forward to the continued success of Zero Waste Strategies and catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks can reach us at zerowaste.org. That's the digit, not the word. So zerowaste.org.
I will put the link to your website in the show notes. Thank you again, Stacy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you like our show, please give us a rating and review on iTunes. And you can show your support by sharing our show with a friend or reach out to us on social media where you'll find us under our Nexus PMG handle. If there's a subject or topic you'd like to hear about, send me an email, btu@nexuspmg.com, or contact me via our website, nexuspmg.com. And while you're there, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter where we share what we're reading and thinking about in the clean tech, green tech sectors. Bigger Than Us is a Nexus PMG production.